Good morning, this is Keegan at Terrier News, and we're going to talk about the Lakota Indians and their very amazing and interesting lifestyle. The Lakota were great hunters. The Lakota Indians relied on the bison for their food. They also killed antelope, deer, and elk, but the bison were their main food source. The Lakota would bring great hunters on a hunting trip, and they would kill just enough bison to feed their community that they lived with. They respected the bison because they provided everything for them. It was very difficult for the Lakota Indians to hunt in the winter. They would usually hunt in the spring and summer when the bison were big and would provide for the community. The Lakota would make pemmican. Pemmican was made by dried meat pounded into powder and mixed with melted animal fat and berries that they would find. It wouldn't go bad if they kept it through the summer, so they preserved it and ate it in the winter when they couldn't find food. They used every part of the bison. They used the meat as food, they would roast or boil the meat to eat it, and they would dry the meat to eat later. They would use the bones as tools and weapons, and the fur would be skinned off the bison and used as clothing for them. They would use the horns as drinking containers, and they would use the organs for containers to store things. The women would gather plants that grew in the Great Plains. This included roots, wild berries, and plants. They would use the roots and berries to make medicine sometimes. They each had different religions and customs, but their respect for the bison brought them all together. Males on average lived to about 48 years old, and women lived to just 52, and almost half the people above 40 have diabetes. That's because they live in a very difficult place in the U.S. Now over to Blake, who's going to take over talking about the homes of the Lakota Indians.
The Lakota Indians made shelters called teepees. They made the teepees out of buffalo hide. The Lakota Indians killed the buffalo for most of their resources. The tribe set up poles and tied them so they could wrap the buffalo hide around the poles. And they would paint on them to tell stories of the family that lived in that teepee.
Info from the book called The Sioux, Lakota culture. The Lakota culture was that they believed in the Great Spirit, had power over everything, and everything had a spirit or soul, living or non. Earth was the mother of all spirits, and the sun had a great power because it gave light. Pigeons were thought to come from spirits, so they had a shaman who was trained to heal and understand signs. A boy would have a vision and then would seek the spirit to protect him for the rest of his life. Men had ceremonies to tell what their spirit. They would stay in a house called a sweat lodge. The man would pray as hot steam purified his body. A man stayed in the lodge for an amount of time, then jumped in cold water, then taken to a place with no food or water, wearing only a breechcloth and moccasins. Then prayed for 3 or 4 days for a vision. When they got one, whatever it was, they would have part of it on them to protect them. They also had one for girls too. An elderly woman stayed with the girl for 4 days, and the girl would pray and do all her chores. During that time, the woman took her to the shaman to know what the dreams mean. Then bathed, dressed in her fine clothes, and a feast was held. The shaman's job was to heal the sick, and believed it was caused by evil spirits to try to enter the body. The sun dance was the most important ceremony of the year. Here, was before the big buffalo hunt. It lasted many a lot of days. The men that danced hurt themselves so they can have a life spared or heal a sick kid. A tree was painted to be a a sacred pole. On the fourth day, shamans would go to a hill and pray. Then the dancers put a skewer that was tied to the sacred pole and danced with no food or water until the skewer came out. They used buffalo for everything: horns for cups, hides for clothes, bones for weapons, meat for food, and sewing stuff from sinew, a muscle.
Hello, my name is Misha Robinson. Today I'll be talking to you about Lakota fashion. In the Lakota tribe, they had two different types of clothing to wear. They had one type for daily tasks and another for special occasions. In the Lakota, they used tanned elk, deer, or bison hides to make the clothing. Men would wear sleeveless shirts and breechcloths, while women would wear knee-length dresses and leggings that would reach their knees. Lakota men and women would have different ways to decorate their clothing. They would wear jewelry such as armbands and colorful bone necklaces. And when at 5 or 6 years of age, children would get their ears pierced. Lakota fashion was unique and interesting, and it was different from the clothing we make nowadays. This is Misha Robinson.
The weather was mainly dry in the summer, and in the winter, if they were up north, they would get some snow, but in other places, they wouldn't get any snow. However, if they were lucky, they would get a few inches. The geography was mainly flat plains and a few cliffs and hills.